tuning in for some movie reviews. Film flickers of movie reviews. Let's hear those movie reviews. Film flickers of movie reviews. And action.
Hello flickers, it is 3 AM in the UK. I have just got back from watching The Force Awakens and this is our no spoiler review. Now, in case you've been living under a rock for the last year and a half, The Force Awakens is the first of an expected trilogy of new films in the Star Wars franchise. This one is directed by J.J. Abrams of many films, but most recently I guess of the Star Trek reboots, which he did a very fine job on. He's not doing any more of the films in the franchise apparently. He's just doing this one, but he will probably produce on the others. But, well, how did it go? Well, I guess we go back to looking at the past first, and obviously the prequels are the kind of big stumbling point in the Star Wars era. Now, for me personally, I do not think the prequels were bad films. I think they were bad Star Wars films, but in terms of sci-fi, they were very good. They were especially good at getting a new generation of young children into sci-fi films. And there's a whole lot of toys on the way, let's be honest, but still, they weren't bad films. I mean, the third one of the prequels I actually think was quite a good film, and I personally rate it higher than Return of the Jedi. But for most fans, the prequels were a huge problem. They didn't have the same spirit of the original films. They didn't get the same kind of grip on you as the original films did, which, you know, it was always going to be tricky because the original films were such an incredible and iconic part of movie making history. They revolutionized how sci-fi films and sci-fi entertainment full stop was done, and they changed the world of special effects as well at the same time. So, well, I mean, let's be honest, all of that kind of seems like I'm stalling, but I'm not. I'm genuinely not. Well, it's a good film. It's not a bad film at all. Is it a good Star Wars film? It's an okay Star Wars film. Certainly much better than the prequels. I still wouldn't rate it higher than A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back. But that's a tricky target anyway, and it was never going to be an easy target for any film really to match. They have such a stranglehold on certainly my young mind. But no, it's a fair crack. Now, this is obviously, yeah, like I say, there's going to be no spoilers, so I'm going to try very hard. I am incredibly tired, but I'm still going to try to concentrate on not letting any spoilers through. So we'll start with the bad things. There is some fairly ropey acting in places, mostly with the younger cast, which, you know, fair enough. It's for a couple of them, it's their first big film, but for a director of J.J. Abrams' experience, you kind of would have thought he'd have got a hand on it a little bit more. It's not atrocious, but there are a couple of scenes which do kind of take you out of the action a little bit because you're distracted by the acting. It's a shame, but it doesnn ruin the film, not by any means. None of these bad points ruin the film. Like I say, it is a good film. Although there is a lot of practical effects, which is great. We wanted to see that. That's what made the original Star Wars so believable. Although it had CGI, it did rely a lot on practical effects. There are a few times when CGI is used when it just didn't have to be, and it's good, but it's still not great that it's ever going to really fool anyone. So that's a shame. But again, not terrible. Whereas the original Star Wars, there was some humour in it, but it was mostly coming from one or two sources. Like the droids tended to give a little bit of humour, and Han Solo and Chewbacca were also a bit of a little bit of humour, a little bit of light relief into the films. In this one, there's kind of, it's all over the shop a bit, and it's not as good. The writing, certainly for the humorous parts of it, just isn't as tight as it was in the original Star Wars films. The bits with Harrison Ford doing it, they're spot on. I mean, Harrison Ford has lost none of the Han Solo character after all these years. He genuinely hasn't. He is Han Solo as soon as he appears, and he is all the way through. But just the two new guys, it's got a kind of, they've gone for kind of a buddy, like a almost Band of Brothers style hero bravado comedy thing, and it just doesn't work. It comes across as clunky, and it's it didn't have to be there. It kind of feels forced, and I really do wish they hadn't gone for that. It changes the tone of the film a little bit, but again, not drastically, and it doesn't continue all the way through the film, and the actors really snap in after a little bit, and you feel the change, and second half of the film onwards, acting problems kind of go away, and everything is really good. As for acting, I really do have to call out Daisy Ridley. She does a superb job in this. There was a couple of times when I was a little bit worried they were going to go with the woman needs a lot of help from the man style of thing, and it looked dangerously close, but then no, she turns around and she really does kick ass, which is great, and it's really good to see from a film that, personally, I mean, I've said this before, I think invented the whole idea of a female hero who didn't need a man's presence to be strong. It's good to see that they're continuing that, and Daisy Ridley's character Ray really does hold her own in all the scenes, even the ones with Harrison Ford, and God, you've got to be a good actor to do that, because Harrison Ford is dangerous in any film, but especially in a film where he is playing such an iconic character. He's just almost always going to steal the scene, but Daisy Ridley does hold her own quite a lot. Now, it's not to say that the other actors don't hold their own. John Boyega does do a good job. He is one of the actors that kind of has a bit of a faltering performance at the beginning, but he really picks up the game after a while, and he comes across well. The character I think wasn't done so well is Kylo Ren, which is a shame, because he is meant to be a centerpiece character, and he doesn't feel menacing at all. There's kind of it's almost, in some parts of the film, he almost comes off as a spoiled brat, which you don't. I mean, that smacks a little bit too much of the prequels with Anakin Skywalker. I don't know. I think they could have done a better job with him. That's all. Because the problem is that these films, they really are rated more on what the antagonist is like. Like the original Star Wars, if you say Star Wars, you tend to think of Darth Vader first, because he is the thing that sticks in your mind. And with these films, I don't think anyone is going to think of Kylo Ren first, because when you watch it, although he's obviously powerful, he's obviously he is the bad guy, but you don't get a kind of, oh god, this feels dangerous feel about him. He just doesn't ever come across like he's cold-blooded and just willing to follow orders to the end, like you got with Darth Vader in the first couple of films. One other issue is you've got kind of the shock scene, which, they all have shock scenes, so I'm not spoiling anything for you, but it's telegraphed a long, long way off, so when it actually happens, it's not a shock at all. You're almost expecting something else to happen, because you're thinking, well, no, it's obviously going to happen, this is a double bluff, and it's not. So yeah, it's a shame, but I've never been a fan of shock scenes forced into these films anyway, so it didn't hurt me that much. Right, so I mean, I've gone through the bad parts. What are the good parts? They are many, which is brilliant, obviously. The fight scenes are great, really well choreographed. The spaceship battles again good. They look very realistic. This part is CGI done well. They look frantic. They look like there's tons going on all at once, but you can still follow it as well. So it's an incredibly good job by the teams that worked on that. The story is brilliant. I was completely taken in with the story, which is fantastic, obviously, because episode 1, I just did not care about young Anakin, which was kind of a big part of the film. But in this, you do get carried with the story, and so a brilliant job there. Obviously, the big thing with this film is that it did include some of the original characters, and they all do brilliant jobs of reprising their roles. I mean, there's not a stutter among them. A bit easier for Peter Mayhew, I guess, because he's in a Chewbacca costume, but still, it is Chewbacca and it feels like Chewbacca, and Han Solo feels like Han Solo. Well, I guess there is only one question. I said it is a good film. Should you go and watch it? Yes, if you like sci-fi, you should definitely go and watch it. This is a fantastic sci-fi film. If you're going to this expecting it to have that same magic as the original Star Wars films, I think you'll be slightly disappointed, because it isn't the original Star Wars films. But that's not a complaint, because I think it's always going to be tough for anyone to reclaim that feeling, because they really were breaking new ground. As the vanguard of a whole new generation of Star Wars, it's perfect. It really is. It's got enough elements in there to get new people on board the franchise and to carry it on. It doesn't feel like it was a big toy commercial, which is obviously what Return of the Jedi and for a large part the prequels were kind of accused of. Obviously it's got BB-8 and those toys came out immediately. He's a bit, he's kind of used the same way R2-D2 is in the first film, so you can't complain too much about that. It's he's an object of use, and he's kind of cute. He's a cute robot, which is always helpful. In terms of the feel of the original films, there's a few elements in there. Like I say, seeing the old characters is always really good, but it's at the beginning of the film, the John Williams score kicks in, and you do get a little bit of that feeling. There is that stirring in your soul, but that's John Williams' score. You could probably play it over an Adam Sandler film and it would still make you feel like you should watch it. Obviously the Millennium Falcon appears, and that's, you know, that you get that feeling that Millennium Falcon is always going to be something that gets Star Wars fans in a bit of a frenzy, so it's really nice seeing it. And it does, to me, it looks like it's the same. And people were saying there were design changes, but I can't, not straight from my memory anyway, I can't see any design changes. It looks like the old Millennium Falcon. It certainly seems to fly a bit like it. It's an enjoyable film. The 3D, I went to see the 3D release of it. It works quite well. I've not truly been sold on the whole idea of 3D cinema anyway, but it works pretty well. There's some nice scenes where things really do. You do a bit of the because they're coming towards you, which is great. I mean, I guess that's what 3D is there for. So if you're a fan of 3D, then you won't feel cheated by paying probably the extra, because I'm guessing all cinemas charge extra for 3D nowadays. It will feel like it's bringing something to the performance. I can definitely recommend the film, unless you despise sci-fi, in which case why on earth are you thinking about going to see this film? Then you'll like it. It's strong. It has got a good cast for the most part. The acting is good. The effects are good. The action is superb, almost non-stop. One thing actually I didn't say earlier about bad things, and it's because we had it in the original Star Wars films anyway, and that's stormtroopers aiming. Now, yes, I realise you can't have your main characters being killed off, but we had a real big resurgence of unlucky aiming stormtroopers. I didn't think we were going to get it, because right at the beginning they're shooting and they're hitting almost everything they're aiming at, like immediately with one shot. But no, as soon as a main character is in danger, all of a sudden, again, it's aiming around again and hitting walls rather than hitting them. There's ways of writing the story to get away from doing things like that, and it looks a bit rubbish, especially when you have just shown some scenes where they've been dead aims. It's a shame, it really is, but I guess you kind of expect that from a Star Wars film. It's almost part of the tapestry now, isn't it? Captain Phasma, you've probably seen her in the trailers. Big shiny stormtrooper, looks like she's from Battlestar Galactica. Played by the wonderful Gwendolyn Christie, who you probably know from Game of Thrones. She's not used enough. Hopefully she'll turn up in the other films, hopefully. But she just kind of seemed almost to be part of set design rather than actually being a character. Which is a shame, because it's quite a nice character, the idea of having this special stormtrooper walking around, but not very well used, which is a bit of a shame. Well, that's it for my no spoiler review. Cut the long story short, go and watch the film. It is an incredibly good sci-fi film. And well, I'm going to bed and seeing what sleep I can get before I have to get up for work. Bye, Flickers. Thanks for watching the video, and if you did like it, then please hit the like button, and if you want to see more from us, then please hit subscribe.
And don't forget to leave a comment below, and if you've got any suggestions for films that we should be reviewing in the future, please leave us a nice little message. Oh, and check out our previous videos.